Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amanda Carlson, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator here at Advisicon. I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar. Here at Advisicon, we are a group of authors, teachers, consultants, and technologists offering training for the Microsoft technologies such as Project, Office 365, Power BI, Visio, and SharePoint, as well as project management and methodology. With attending any of our training sessions, we offer PDUs as we are a registered education provider with the Project Management Institute. And at the close of today's session, I will give some instructions on how you can claim your PDUs and how to get in contact with Advisicon for any questions that you may have. Now, before we get started, I'd like to go over a few things so you know how to participate in today's event. If you would review the control panel, that should be on the top right of your screen. The audience is muted during this session, so in order to ask questions, you will need to submit them in the questions window of the control panel. This webinar will be recorded and uploaded to the Advisicon YouTube channel for those who could not attend today's session live. Please note that any questions or comments submitted will not be displayed in the recording, nor will any of your personal information be shared. Now it's my pleasure to introduce today's instructor, Kevin Bruder, Advisicon's very own Director of Products. So without further ado, I will hand this presentation over and we can get started.
Great, thanks, Amanda. So today we're going to be talking about SharePoint, specifically around the new architecture recommendations as it comes to SharePoint. Some of you may be aware, some of you this may be new information. It's been out there for quite a bit of time now, but it's kind of been growing in terms of awareness and detail in terms of what exactly this means and how you should build out your SharePoint tenant or your new SharePoint farm with regards to the newest, latest, and greatest architecture for future proofing and proper site architecture to take advantage of the latest features and integrations with Office 365. After we talk about the architecture a little bit, we'll talk about some of the newest features that just came out in the past month, I believe, maybe 2 months ago at most. We've got a new feature that has to do with the menu and a new way to make it layout, which is really nice from a navigation perspective, as well as some better control over the look and feel of your modern SharePoint sites. If you've been to any of my webinars before, you'll know that I don't do a lot of slides, and so after we're done with the slides, we'll jump into a demo and kind of show you these features live and each of these items. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. First, I want to kind of talk about the old way, so to speak, of SharePoint architecture, how we used to lay out sites, kind of the first step we would take whenever we got a new client, for example, that was looking at standing up a new SharePoint or re-architecting their SharePoint. These would be the kind of things we would look at in terms of how do we want to lay out your site collections. That picture on the left there is kind of a sample of what that might look like, several different site collections, each having its own subsites. And the question always was, how do we split up these collections? What's the right way to do it? And a lot of times we would be thinking about security. That was definitely one aspect, as with SharePoint, everything inherits security from the bottom up to the top, and the top in this case being that site collection level. And then the other thing we would think about is any cross-site scripting requirements. So what I meant by that was if you've got one site with information on it, you want to be able to display or edit that information on another site. Depending on exactly what you needed to do, there were certain conditions in which that would be possible or not be possible, or that would work out of the box, or it would require, some heavy custom code. And so that was actually one of the biggest factors when we were deciding how to lay out our sites, is that basically when you try to do that across a site collection from one site collection to another, it became extremely difficult and largely error prone. There was lots of bugs with it, even in the best of scenarios. So really there was a lot of things that we thought about was really that cross-site scripting, and then also, of course, from a security perspective. One of the other things we had to think about a lot was site collection features. If you've been a SharePoint administrator before, you'll know that there's a lot of different features within a SharePoint that you can turn on or off that change kind of the whole set of the SharePoint, the whole feature set. It also changes the look and feel sometimes. It changes the security sometimes. It really depends on what you turn on or off. And sometimes you really don't want to turn on a specific feature, and sometimes you need a specific feature to set up a site the way you want it. For those of you, once again, that have been admins before, you know that there are site collections features and there are also site features. And so that also came into play when we were trying to decide how to split up the site collections. Is really looking at what features do you need? Do these all go together? So if we turn on this feature in this collection, it's not going to break this person's site, but this person's site needs that feature. All those different kinds of things. It was actually a very complicated discussion. And the reason that it took so much time as well is it's not something that was easy to change later. You know, if we got halfway through and found out, you know, it would have been better laid out this way, that could be a lot of rework. It's not something that's easy to lift and shift or pick up and move and change. And so this was something we really had to think about a lot at the beginning of the project. And if we came into something halfway already done, sometimes there's a lot of rework and reorganizing things to achieve certain goals. So in the old model, this is kind of how it used to look. That picture where you got several different collections, a bunch of different subsites within there. Usually we'd end up organizing by organization. So, you know, you'd have your HR collection, your finance collection, so forth and so on, things like that. So the new model looks a little something like this. The main core thing of it is really everything is a collection. If you're going to make a new site, just make a new collection. And I have a feeling we'll see that terminology of a site collection is probably going to start just going away. There's a lot of reasons that Microsoft is shifting us in that direction. And when this was originally announced and it was originally brought to my attention, I was actually a little bit taken aback because of all those things I was talking about, especially with the cross-site scripting. I was like, there's no way that's going to work. You know, we're going to have all sorts of problems. As I've thought about it a little bit more, it actually is really great. It saves a whole ton of other problems. Don't get me wrong, we still have those cross-site scripting potential issues that we need to overcome. But with Office 365, we kind of have a new way of thinking about those issues. And so a lot of those have kind of fallen off the radar. And all those other complicated things I talked about when you have to set up the site and think about all these different aspects, this model allows you to not have to think about those. And it's much easier to change. You don't have to worry about it. You can always just drop a site, add a new site. It's not a big deal. So it really has a lot of benefits setting up your sites this way. You still, of course, can have subsites on your site collection, which is what I'm showing here. And that definitely still makes sense to do for something that really is, you know, kind of just a small thing. That definitely doesn't need to be its own collection. You still have some ambiguity in how you do that, but for the most part, you have a lot more site collections in the new way of doing things. But one of the problems with setting it up this way was navigation, especially in SharePoint Online. You know, up until, let's say, 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, if you didn't know the URL of that site collection you were trying to get to, you had a really hard time finding it. It was unlikely you were going to be able to find it. You had to go ask someone for the URL. Because unless you're searching and hoping you hit a specific document that's on that site, you're just not going to find it. And so to overcome that, Microsoft has released this thing called a hub site, and that's one of the things we're going to show in the demo today. And a hub site is really to help overcome that. So a hub site is what we might have considered like the root level site collection before. It's now a separate site. Once again, it's its own collection. But it is tied to a specific set of sites as the hub for those sites. And among everything within that hub, you can share your top level navigation. So once again, very similar to how you would do that with a site collection before. And you can also share information. There's information that rolls up to the hub site, like news and other web parts in the modern interface. I have built-in connectors to automatically pull and aggregate data from all the different site collections into that hub site. One thing that is very different than the old way is this is no longer about security. Adding a hub site to your site collections doesn't do anything from a security perspective. And so now the security is all managed at those site collection levels of each site, basically. And so in some ways that actually helps as well. It takes out a little bit of the complexity that goes along with SharePoint security, makes it a little bit easier to explain, a little bit easier to learn. But you don't have that, say, hierarchy of security already built in. And so when setting up your new tenant, that's something you'll want to think about and make sure you still utilize groups in your security model so that, if you've got the HR hub site, you can just have an HR group and everyone in there can, you can add that group to all the sub-site collections as well as the hub. But that's not done automatically, so that's something, to think about when you're designing your farm. The other main reason, I guess, behind doing this, right? The main reason behind changing this, besides all of those little benefits I talked about that makes it easier to think about and to manage, is the integration with Office 365. So in Office 365, everything is tied to a group. Not everything, but for the most part, you've got an Office 365 group and all your different components of Office 365 tied to that group. So you can have a Teams channel that's associated with the group, actually a full team in Teams, Microsoft Teams that's associated with the group, a planner plans associated with the group. The group will maybe have its SharePoint site. And so by making everything a site collection level, it's starting to make everything fit together more nicely. And that has to do with Microsoft's whole method of driving us towards this modern workplace where everything really has a seamless integration and you can work in a single pane of glass and get to all your different applications. This is driving us down that path to make those integrations much easier, make everything a lot cleaner. So that I think is the main reasoning for this shift in recommended architecture. But it does have a lot of kind of fringe benefits associated with it as well. Next, we'll talk about a couple of the newest features that just came out. So these new menu flyouts, I believe they're called mega menus. If you're familiar with top-level navigation in SharePoint previously, you'll know it's usually a hierarchy type tree where you'll go into the first menu and then you can go to the right under a second menu. It's like a cascading menu, I believe was the right terminology. This is a new option to you in the modern interface called a mega menu, and I like it a lot more. I think it makes it much easier to navigate. It's a little bit more modern, a little bit more, along with best practices of what we see in other places on the internet. It makes it easier from a UI perspective to get to the links you're going to, right? You don't have to be as accurate with your pointer as maybe you were before when you're going through a cascading drop down. You'd get 3 levels deep and you'd accidentally move your mouse off of the menu and everything would collapse. You'd have to start over. This type of menu is a much easier setup. And so I'll demo that for you and show you how to build one of those. And then the last thing that we'll talk about is a new look and feel type item is, well, both these I guess are look and feel type items, but we have a new way of managing the look and feel of a SharePoint. And so previously you kind of could pick a theme and that was kind of it. You could change like the background image and you could do some things, but it was not this robust. So we have a much better look and feel menu now. I have a feeling it will only continue to grow from here, but even just this new menu that we're going to take a look at, you still can change your theme, but now you have additional options to adjust your navigation and your header and your footer. You can adjust the links in there, and I'm going to show you all of that. So it's actually a really kind of great feature. And so both these are along the same theme. They have to do with look and feel, and I know that actually is probably one of the most common uses that people have with SharePoint when they're building their sites. I usually cover something much more technical, but I think this is much more applicable. We get this question a lot of how do I change the look and feel of my site? How do I put my logo places? So it's really great that Microsoft is focusing in on these areas and giving them a much needed update. So without any further ado, we'll jump into demo. So the first thing I want to cover is just about hub sites, and if you're starting a new farm or just want to know how to look at this for your tenant, we're going to be focusing SharePoint Online here rather than on-premise. How would you get your hub site set up? How would you take a look at that? So if you come into your SharePoint Admin Center, you will need Office 365 admin rights to get to this part. And so you may have to work with your administrator if you don't have those type of permissions. But if you were to come into your SharePoint Admin Center, and if you are an Office 365 administrator, you've probably seen this screen before. This is the classic Admin Center view, where you cannot do anything with hub sites. So to get to any of this new type of control, you actually have to use, at the top here you see this banner, check out the all new SharePoint Admin Center and hit try it now. I don't know at what point they're going to make the conversion and just have you use the new Admin Center. I have a feeling there's some buttons missing still in the new one. That's why you still have to do this try it now. But first thing you need to do is go to the new Admin Center. And so you come up here, click on try it now, and that'll pop open a screen that looks like this. In here, you'll go under sites, you'll go to active sites, and that'll bring you to this screen that has all of your currently active SharePoint sites. You can see we're already in this menu of SharePoint sites that we have a column called Hub Site Association. So for every site, you can associate it to a hub site, or you can actually make it a hub site. So you can see that this one here is associated to the Contoso Marketing Central hub site, and which is this one right below it. And you can see it has in parentheses a hub site next to it. And so you can see that basically this one is a child of this one. So this is the hub site, and then this site's associated with it. And you can associate any number of sites. I actually don't know if there is a limit. I'm sure there is some kind of limit, but I haven't hit one yet, to a hub site. To do that, if we wanted to make this a hub site, for example, you just check the box next to it here and hit hub site. And you can either register that site as a hub site by clicking here, or if you want to associate it with an already existing hub site, you can click here. And so it's really easy to manage. And if you needed to change one later, this one's already associated, you can check the box next to it, change it here. So this is where I was talking about how difficult, how important it was to get it right before in the old model, the old architecture. We had to make sure we got it right at the beginning, because otherwise it was a lot of rework to lift and shift, save a whole site as a template, download it, add it to the solution, download it in the other collection. It's a lot of work to lift and shift in the old model when we have these different site collections. In the new model, it's much easier because you can literally just come up here and click a button and change what hub site something's associated with. So really great improvement from that aspect. So this is kind of how you manage your hub sites. Really, really straightforward, really easy to do. Really nice job by Microsoft on setting this up. And it looks like Steve's answering me there, a maximum of 100 hub sites per tenant. So we can, based on the limits I was mentioning earlier, there is a limit, but I think that's quite a few. So now on this screen, this is that hub site that we were basically looking at here before in the Admin Center. That's Contoso Marketing Central. This is what it looks like. It's just another, once again, SharePoint. Microsoft, I believe, recommends you use I believe it's called the communication template for your hub sites, which gives you some web parts like this news one, and you can put your Yammer web parts in here. But I believe that's really up to you and what you're trying to do. But this is basically what a hub site looks like. It just looks like another SharePoint. The main thing is this menu right here. This is your hub site navigation, basically. And so this menu is what's going to be shared among all the sites in the hub. And so it's a really nice way to keep your top-level navigation consistent across a whole list of sites. So we can go over here and say I want to go to the product marketing site that's within this hub, and I'm there, and you can see my top level navigation is still right here, hasn't changed, things haven't moved around. Oh wait, I need to get back to the central hub. I can click right there and get right back. Very easy to use, and it stays consistent. It's actually really an improvement over what we used to have in the site collections, where you'd add a new site and then there was an option. I believe it said, do you want to use the top level navigation from the parent? And you'd say yes or no. That worked. And then there was a second option that said, do you want to add this to the top level navigation of the parent? You have to say yes or no. One of those was defaulted to no, which I never quite understood, because by default, I think you want them both to be yes, so keeping your navigation consistent, much like this does. But the good news is we don't have to worry about any of that anymore. because this works a lot better, and it stays consistent. It's easy to update. It's easy to drop things, add things to it, add things to the hub, move things to different hubs. Much easier to manage than that old way of doing it in the SharePoint collections with all the different subsites, because it stays nice and consistent. So that's one of the things about hub sites. The other thing that I wanted to show you is, for example, this news web part. Once again, we're in that modern layout. If you're used to seeing your SharePoints a little bit differently, you're probably still looking at a classic SharePoint. So this is a modern site page, and this is a news web part. And I can come in here and click on Edit, and my screen's not quite loading correctly, but I believe this is the news web part. Okay, let's try and reload that again. What I was going to try and show you, we'll see if it works second time here. My internet might be a little bit slow. Is that news web part there is pulling in news across the entire hub. So that's the other thing that the hub site allows you to do, is you can adjust that per web part as well. Let's see here if we can get this to fly out. There we go. In the settings on this news web part, you can say, oh, only pull news from this site, or pull it from all sites in the hub. And I'm over here on the right-hand side. You can see those options of where you want to pull news from. So it makes it an easy way to roll up aggregate data. And I think we'll continue to see more and more web parts that can utilize this hub framework. And this will start to replace a lot of those features that you can currently do in classic SharePoint that when they first released the modern pages, those things were kind of missing. This is definitely a big one of being able to aggregate things from multiple sites. So I think we'll continue to see this trend in a lot of the web parts being able to aggregate information from places across the entire hub, which is one of the big things that I thought was missing from the modern templates. So this is starting to mitigate that risk. So that's the main, kind of two big benefits of the hub site. You get this nice navigation that carries through across them. It keeps everything organized. And then also we're starting to get the ability to aggregate data across the whole hub. Do keep in mind, once again, that your permissions are not managed by the hub. And so you will need to ensure that, you've got a permission model that works with some groups, so that, you add someone to the hub, they have permission to the whole hub, if that's what you want. You may, depending on your use case, not have that, but I think in a lot of cases you would. So that's pretty much everything on hub sites. I do want to show you those two new features that we talked about real quick. So one of them was the mega menu. So if we come into this top level navigation just for the hub site, we've got home, documents, site contents right here. I'm going to click on edit for that. Under the home tab, or let's throw in just underneath the home tab here, I'm just going to put a bunch of links to Google to show you, for example, Google. Let's just copy this so we have a quick, easy way to add a bunch of links here. So I've added a link right now that's going to put it at the same level as the home. So we'll want to make that basically a child link of the home menu there. So we can save that change and just kind of show you. So now we've got a flyout under home, right, with Google there. And then we can start adding a bunch more links. Let's go ahead and add one under Google, Google 2. And let's add a couple more here just so we can give some examples. Google 3 and Google, wow, I can't type. Google 4. Okay, so right now these would all be at the same level. So let's just show you what that looks like real quick. So you can see now we have 4 columns of Google. When we come in here, we can also just continue this hierarchy. So let's put Google 2 a sublink under Google. Let's put Google 4 a sublink under Google 3. Save that. Now you can see under here, we're starting to build our mega menu. So as you continue to add your links, this will continue to be responsive and add columns as needed, and eventually it will grow in vertical length. Like we saw in the screenshot, we had main sub bullets like these 2 bold ones. You could have another bold below each one, or 3 columns with 2 rows. It will automatically grow based on the amount of links you have somewhat, but really based on your screen size. So I do have an extremely wide screen here. I could probably have 4 or 5 columns before it would need to add a second row, which would be a lot of links. But if we were to zoom in, I don't know if I can make it do it with just 2 columns here. Well, I zoomed in a little too far there. Let's see, I think it'll still be 2 columns there. But once you zoom in, you have a smaller screen, small enough that it's just going to take up too much space or not even fit on the screen to have it just in those columns. It will automatically start going to the next row. And so that will be based on each user. It's not something that you have to manage or tell it how many columns or rows to do. It's fully responsive, which is nice. So that's kind of the mega menu. It's very, very easy to use. You just hit this little edit button, and then you can add links and make them sublinks or move them up or out, drag and drop. Very, very easy to use, very powerful, a lot of good rich features. Second thing I wanted to show you was the new look and feel option. So if you come up to the gear option in the top right, click on change the look. You're going to get this menu that we showed in the PowerPoint here. You still have your theme where you can come in here and say, I want to use the blue theme and hit save. Notice my button down here, my save button even changed to blue. That's going to change all your buttons to the blue theme as opposed to the orange theme. Then you've got the new kind of areas, your header. So your header, let's see, I can show you kind of changing here. If we change it to compact versus standard, if you watch this part of the screen, you'll notice compact makes it basically one line, whereas standard, you'll have that title and then the menu underneath. And then you can change your logo nice and easy from right here. You can also change the background of the header. So now it's got a light blue tint. I don't know if you can see that on your screen. I'll make it dark blue just so you can kind of see the difference there. So there's your header options. Your navigation options, this is where you can turn off that new menu if you don't like it and go back to the old cascading style menu. And then we've got, last but not least, our footer. And our footer is way down here at the bottom where it's saying powered by SharePoint communication sites. You can put a logo down there, and you can also put navigation links here. So if I want to put in another Google here, I can do that. And let's say save here. Let's save here so I get that out of the way. It'll be in my bottom right over here, and I'll have a link to Google. So you can put links down here that'll carry across the footer of your whole site. So really nice look and feel menu, much powerful than it used to be with just the themes. So we've got some great features there. That is all I've got to demo for you, and we are almost out of time. So I'll cue it over to Amanda to see if we have any quick questions we can answer on the call.
Sure, thanks. We have one. It says, what can we now do with the look and feel?
Gotcha. So I'm guessing maybe that question went in before I showed that last part there. But pretty much that's the easiest, the basic things you can change. You've still got your standard, your themes, which will change your buttons and in different parts of the overall theme of the site. Keep in mind this top menu bar is across the Office 365, not just the site. And then for each of these sections, you've got your logo, your background colors based on your theme for your header. And then in your footer here, once again, you've got the logo, and you do have a couple other options. You can turn things off here. You can put a little name down in your footer there or in the corner here. So you've got some basic options there. That's your site level. And then everything in between the header here and the footer there, this is all within the page. And so that's the other part of your look and feel, really. As you come in, you edit the page, you can change, add a new title, lots of things you can do within the page. But from the overall site level, those 4 options are basically what I showed you, what you're limited to from the overall site look and feel of this site specifically.
Great. It looks like that's all the time we have, but I quickly want to mention that we do have some upcoming SharePoint webinars, more on branding and site design. So go ahead over to our website and look at our calendar for those upcoming events. And we thank you all for attending today's webinar, and we welcome your questions and feedback. For more information, you can email us at contact@advisicon.com. Once you exit today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation in which you'll need to complete and submit the survey in order to receive those PDUs. From there, you will receive a follow-up email within 2 business days with your PDU information. If you're watching this recording on YouTube or another social media platform, please be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss out on any future uploads. And on behalf of Advisicon, Kevin, and myself, we thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you participate in our future webinars. Have a great day, everyone.